Welcome back to That Wasn't in My Textbook, our bi-weekly podcast that helps us uncover the things we always wish we learned from that boring, bulky textbook. I'm your host, Toya, and you're now listening to episode 14 on the history of Coquito, Puerto Rican Eggnog. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy end of the year. Happy holidays if you're into that type of thing. Happy last episode of season 1 before season 2 starts off in the new year. That was a lot. Today, we're talking about all things Coquito, also known as Puerto Rican Eggnog, or as our guest puts it today, the cuter sibling of eggnog, or the cuter cousin. I'm excited for this episode because it's dedicated to learning more about Puerto Rican culture, and it allows us to diversify our drink knowledge, our drink palettes, if you will, and our at-home bars, because that's what we're doing during this quarantine. Am I right? In this episode, we are going to learn about the ingredients that makes up this yummy, tasty drink called Coquito. We're going to uncover the origins of Coquito, looking at who made it and how long it's been around. We're going to discuss the significance of Coquito on Puerto Rican culture, on American culture, on drink culture, because that shit is good. And we're going to dabble in the little age-old debate of whether or not authentic Coquito has egg on it or not, because that's the beef in the streets right now. And we get some tips on how to drink Coquito, have the best drinking Coquito experience, and how to make it if you want to give that a try. And then, of course, we learn about our special guest today, whose name is Johnny Rivera, who is the founder of Brooklyn Coquito. Now, let me put out a little disclaimer before we kick into this episode, which is that I do not identify as Puerto Rican. I am no expert on Puerto Rican culture at all. You know, I did grow up in Spanish Harlem, so I do appreciate Puerto Rican culture. You know, I respect Puerto Rican pride all day, every day. You know, I love the Puerto Rican Day Parade. But again, I'm no expert on the culture or the drink. So that's why I'm excited that Johnny Rivera, the founder of Brooklyn Coquito, joins all of us today and schools us on a few things. Johnny founded Brooklyn Coquito in 2012. And it's your go-to place for Coquito if you want to order it for pickup in New York City, or if you want to get it delivered, because it's being delivered nationwide. And I, myself, am waiting for my delivery of the Coquito. I can't wait to get my hands on it. They offer a 32-ounce nice glass bottle that says got Coquito on it. Very cute. And they even offer a 4-pack of canned Coquito, which is so dope because it allows you to discreetly take Coquito with you to the beach, to the park, to the family function. Make sure you don't get your cups mixed up because, you know, COVID. And then on top of that, Brooklyn Coquito, founded by Johnny Rivera, specializes in traditional Coquito recipe, and then they also have a vegan Coquito recipe that they offer both in bottle and can form. So it's great for all of us non-dairy, lactose intolerant folks out there. Johnny's got us, Brooklyn Coquito got us. We can drink it and our tummies will be fine. Yes, so that's a little background about Brooklyn Coquito and our guest. And, you know, when I get my hands on the vegan Coquito, I'm going to do a little, you know, taste and review on That Wasn't in My Textbook podcast IG. So make sure you follow us over there. Before we jump into the history of Coquito and talk about this very special drink with a very special Coquito mixologist, if you will. If you're new here, I just want to quickly welcome you to the rawest, dopest, realist, I don't know if all those are even words, it doesn't even matter, podcast out there, history podcast out there, correction. We talk about all those things we wish were in our textbook. We're unfiltered. We're rooted in research. I'm not just pulling stuff out of my ass, but we talk about those unpopular opinions or those opinions that, you get in trouble for in class. You're safe here. Don't you worry about that, okay? And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. Today we have another mind-blowing episode about tasty, yummy, cinnamony, coconutty Coquito. I wanted to also give a quick reminder that this is the last episode of season 1. We're going to take a winter break and come back next year on Friday, January 8th for season 2, which will be bigger and better. So mark your calendars, follow us all over the interwebs because we'll be doing stuff and giveaways and teasers over the next couple of weeks. And don't forget about us. Don't do that. Don't forget about us, okay? That's like my number one fear. Don't do that. Now, today we're talking about Coquito because it's that time of the year in some places where they have this thing called like winter. And then they even have this thing. It's like this white stuff. It's called like snow. Okay, I should stop being sarcastic about winter. I mean, I did have winter like 2 years ago. I've only been in LA for 2 years. But, when winter comes, traditionally speaking, people tend to bring out the drinks, the warm ones, the toasty ones, the milk-based ones during the holidays. And most of these drinks have a milk base, which I think I already said, and they're similar to eggnog, which is an American holiday drink. And while eggnog is pretty popular, other countries and other cultures throughout Latin America and the Caribbean have their own holiday creamy drink staples. So you can find signature holiday drinks in places like Cuba, Honduras, Haiti, Guatemala, and many more. And they all have their own creamy based drink that reflects their culture. But today we're focused on Coquito, and we're going to learn about Puerto Rico's signature holiday drink. I don't know about y'all, but I'm just excited because Coquito definitely wasn't in nobody's textbook. And if it was, y'all need to hit me up and let me know. But it wasn't in our textbook. And it has such, Puerto Rican culture has such a large impact on New York City culture and American culture, right? And that's why I'm really excited to kind of dig into that. That's the first reason. And then the second one is just like as a Black Harlem girl who grew up in New York City, who grew up in Spanish Harlem, who went to school in Spanish Harlem, this topic just reminds me of home, especially this time of year. I remember my first sip of Coquito, okay? And I'm not going to tell you how old I was because that doesn't really matter. But I remember that warm, homey, cinnamony, coconutty, milky drink. And that shit was so good. And like I said before, I'm not Puerto Rican, but as someone who grew up in New York City, as an adult, this is the time, whether you live in Harlem, the Bronx, Brooklyn, that someone, whether you are Puerto Rican or not, is looking for the person who is making Coquito. Most of the time they have some type of Puerto Rican heritage, right? So this is the time everyone's scrambling, looking for someone who's making Coquito so they can put in their orders before they sell out, because they sell out fast because they're good, okay? And so I'm not sure how other places operate outside of New York City, but New York City has a really cool kind of underground homemade cocktail scene. So in the summer, it's all about the homemade nutcracker drink, which is really held down by, the Black folks, the Black people in New York City. And then in the wintertime, you have the Coquito season, which is held down by the Puerto Ricans. And of course, you can drink Coquito all year round, and you can drink nutcracker all year round. But, this is the season for Coquito. So I'm excited to learn more about a drink that I grew up on, but didn't really know the background about. And I'm excited to learn alongside all of you, because again, I'm not an expert. And because I'm not an expert, that's why I am happy that we were joined by special guest Johnny Rivera, founder of Brooklyn Coquito, who schools us on everything Coquito and its connection to Puerto Rican culture. And so I really appreciate him for coming and educating us. So like every episode, I'm going to start out solo dolo, giving you a brief history of the topic at hand, which today is Coquito, aka Puerto Rican Eggnog. And it's all based in research. I'm not pulling stuff out of my ass. And if you ever want to see the sources that I use, you can click on the episode, and I usually list my sources there. Or you can also go to the website for That Wasn't in My Textbook.com, and there's always sources listed, so you know that I ain't just making shit up. Okay, so we're gonna start out with me solo dolo, giving you a brief history based on the research I've done, and then we're gonna jump into the interview with Johnny, who's gonna give us some more insight on this topic. So, like every history section of the podcast, we always start with the definition. And so coquito actually means little coconut in Spanish. And it's a traditional Christmas drink that originated in Puerto Rico. The coconut-based alcoholic beverage is similar to eggnog, and like the title, it is oftentimes called the Puerto Rican Eggnog. The main ingredients of coquito, regardless of the recipe, are coconut milk, coconut cream, Puerto Rican rum, and sweetened condensed milk. Some argue that authentic coquito has eggs, while others say nah. That's really just your personal business and all up to you. Now, this is part that I found really interesting in my research, which was that there are some flavors to coquito. So you can find strawberry coquito, Nutella coquito, and your girl loves Nutella. Okay, you can have chocolate coquito and other flavors, just to name a few. The alcohol percentage in coquito varies because it's a homemade drink, and the recipes differ because they've been passed down from generation to generation. So it really depends on who's making it to figure out how strong it is, but it can sneak up on you. I've never had any coquito. I'm sure it exists and it probably still tastes delicious. But yeah, there's really no way to decipher. Of course, Johnny shares with us how much he puts in his coquito because he has to as a registered business. But when you get it on the street, traditionally, you don't really know until you taste it, which is a part of the magic, right? There are similar drinks to coquito in other countries in the Caribbean and in Spain. In Cuba, for example, the drink is served with coconut ice cream, which sounds pretty good. In the United States, as we've already discussed, coquito is known as a signature drink of Puerto Ricans and a part of Puerto Rican heritage. And it's also really known if you've traveled to Puerto Rico. Like when you get off the plane, when you enter into the resort, they're welcoming you with a coquito. So if you've been to Puerto Rico, you've probably tasted this drink. In the US, we even have Coquito Masters, which is a coquito competition, and it's a blind tasting. It's $3.99 and it's open to the public. The event allows attendees to go around, sipping different coquitos here and there, and vote for their favorites. The Coquito Master is announced later that same day, and that's usually the run of the show for the Coquito Masters competition. And this event is held every year and put together by the International Coquito Tasting Federation. So it's official. Originally, the contest was only held in New York City, but coquito has become so popular, and we know it's so damn good that the Coquito Master competition has expanded to other states. So if you're interested to see if there is a Coquito Masters competition wherever you are, check out their website. I believe they have all the places listed. Of course, I think some of these competitions have been on pause because of COVID, but it's still interesting to know and to learn. While there is no doubt that coquito originated in Puerto Rico, the history behind who created this delicious drink is hella unclear and vague, and my research uncovers a bunch of different theories and educated guesses and whatnot. But honestly, I just blame colonialism for the confusion because they just didn't keep records, especially of the truth and especially of people like the enslaved people and the original indigenous people of Puerto Rico. But a lot of my research also pointed to Coquito, aka Puerto Rican Eggnog's origins to the period of Spanish colonization of the island. But the creation of this Puerto Rican eggnog doesn't stop with the colonizers, okay? No, no, no. To truly understand unique cuisine, culture, and of course Coquito, because that's what we're talking about today, you have to understand the origins of those who came to the island and mixed their cultures together over centuries. So it is historically believed that Puerto Rican culture is a hybrid mixture of 4 different cultures. The first culture being the indigenous Taino population. The second culture that makes up Puerto Rican culture is believed to be the Spanish colonizers, unfortunately, not to be confused with the American colonizers. We'll get back to that in a few. The third culture that makes up the Puerto Rican culture, this hybrid, is the imported, I would say stolen Africans that were enslaved and forced to work, on the sugar plantations on the island. That's the third influence to Puerto Rican culture. And then the later influence is the United States. And so at the intersection of these different cultures is Coquito. And one source that I read beautifully connected these different cultures together to help us understand how Coquito may have came about. It broke down how each culture added a layer of flavor to Coquito. And it goes a little something like this. The Spanish colonizers brought with them a taste for a drink called possets. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's Possets. It's a hot beverage made with warm milk curdled with brandy, wine, or sherry. But once they came to Puerto Rico, the Spanish colonizers started to use local rum in the recipe. Next came the addition of coconuts to the recipe. And coconuts was another colonial import incorporated into Puerto Rican food, incorporated into Coquito by the Africans that were enslaved and brought to Puerto Rico to labor in the sugarcane industry. It was then after the Spanish-American War that ended in 1898, 122 years ago, that the control of the island transferred from Spanish colonizers to American colonizers. And that's when the final 2 ingredients were added to Puerto Rican's eggnog recipe, which was the evaporated milk and canned condensed milk. Oh, America, with your canned food. But it is good in the Coquito. I'm not going to complain about that. And that's how the flavors of Coquito came together through these 4 cultures that mixed on the island over hundreds and hundreds of years. And now it's made in kitchens in and outside of Puerto Rico and has evolved to have flavors, and it's so good that there's competitions and people are creating businesses around making Coquito and letting us all get a little taste of Puerto Rican culture right in our homes. Now that we've discussed a brief history of Coquito, let's jump into the enlightening, insightful, dope, and kind of poetic, because Johnny drops a lot of gems, interview with our guest, Johnny Rivera, founder of Brooklyn Coquito, who helps us take a deeper dive into the flavors of Coquito, talks about how he started making it, how he was taught how to make Coquito by a grandmother-like figure, and just how Puerto Rican culture, Coquito, all mixed together. And of course, we also learn about his business. Let's get into it. Hi, Johnny. Thank you for joining me today. I'm very excited to have you here on That Wasn't in My Textbook podcast.
For sure.
I know you are the founder of Brooklyn Coquito, and so, National Coquito Day is coming up, so I felt like it was only right to have you on here. And this is the last episode of the season.
Oh, nice.
So it's nice to kind of end it off.
A fourth quarter kind of guy, so I like the fourth quarter. It's all good.
Yes, exactly. And that is your season, because December holiday Coquito. So I wanted just to start off with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you started, Brooklyn Coquito in 2012 and all that other stuff.
Awesome, for sure. First, thank you so much for for having me on. Brooklyn Coquito, 2012. Yeah, I've been making Coquito for, as far as the company now, for 8 years. I started making it in 2010 was the first time I made Coquito. And the ingredients were shared by someone who was like a grandmother to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was around the holidays, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to a party. I got to bring something. So I made the Coquito, and I brought it to a party, and everyone fell in love with it. Everyone loved it. But there was some people that couldn't drink it because of some of the ingredients that were in it. So the following year, that was like, I made maybe like 3-4 bottles that one time. Then the following year, I said, you know what, I want to switch it. I want to make it my own. So I switched and tweaked some of the ingredients, some of the recipe, and that next year, just it went from like 3 to 4 bottles to now like 15, 20. Like people started like, hey, Johnny's the Coquito guy. You make the Coquito. This year I'm calling you for the Coquito. Cool. Then in 2012, I decided, you know what? I want to make it more personal for me. I want to, because Coquito traditionally is made from the house. The ingredients are shared from grandparents, grandmothers, abuelitas, and you just put it in recycled bottles that you have around the house, whether it's a wine bottle, a rum bottle, a vodka bottle, anything, milk gallons, anything that you have, you put it in. But I wanted to more have it represent me. And I realized, you know what, I'm not selling wine. I'm not giving wine out to people. I'm not giving wine at parties. I'm making Coquito, and it's me. I'm making it. So I decided to just brand it to represent the two places of where I'm from. I was born in Ponce, Puerto Rico, and raised in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And I decided to marry them both together and call it Brooklyn because that's the place that made me, and Coquito because traditionally that's the name of the drink. So from there it just became its thing, and here I am in 2020, still rocking out.
Yeah, that's great. I love that story of how it's like passed down from generation to generation.
Yes.
And, of course, you can't go to a party empty-handed. So you had to go to that party with something.
Right.
So I just wanted to add another signature question of the show that we always start off with is like, what is your definition of Coquito? Especially for people who are listening and maybe have never tried this wonderful drink. How would you define it?
To define Coquito is to really dig deep. Only because it's so rich in culture and it's been around for so many years that the definition, I would say, varies depending on people. But for me, when I think about Coquito, I think about family. I think about joy. I think about music, loud music. I think about family just talking loud in the living room and the smell of food. Little baby, the kids sleeping on top of the coats in the back bedroom, while all the adults are just dancing, having a great time. Those are the memories that stick for me whenever I think about Coquito, only because it just has so many layers and so many different senses to what it means, that all those things really define it for me. Like, Coquito is something that, it can taste great, but it can also smell great. When you make it, it has sounds. So from a blender to the opening of a can to the click, 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 click from the can hitting the blender, all these different sounds that just kind of touch all the different senses in people. So I can close my eyes and smell Coquito. I can close my eyes and hear it. I can close my eyes and taste it. And I think that really defines the Puerto Rican culture. So so all those things for me kind of make Coquito.
Wow, that was beautiful. That was poetic. I really like that. Yeah.
Awesome.
And the process, especially the process of making something at home that's traditionally made at home, it is like an art form. It is poetry.
Yeah.
So it was
and a lot of love goes into it too, especially because this is something like grandmothers are adored. The older generation in our cultures are adored. Sometimes more adored than our parents.
Yeah.
So it's like when you take on a responsibility to pass on something or to take on something to continue it, you gotta add the love to it. If there's not love to it, then it just becomes something that you just picking up and you're just gonna let go. So for me, I didn't want that to happen. It's why I've been doing it for so many years.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the love is one of the secret ingredients, right?
Yeah, because you can taste it too. You can taste love. You can
That's
taste when
true.
something is made out of love. You ever ate at a restaurant like, oh my goodness, it's so good, and then the
Yeah.
chef is so jolly, coming out and saying thank you. Yeah, so love is a key recipe, key ingredient.
Yes. And speaking of recipes, I don't know if you want to share your recipe, but
Oh no,
how
I
do
can't do
you,
that.
well, I guess, okay. So I already talked about, before we started, I already talked about the basic ingredients that are in Coquito, but
Yeah.
I know that some people argue about, like, whether Coquito has egg in it or not. So are you team egg or no egg? Like, how do you feel about that argument?
Well, right when I first made the coquito, I did it with egg,
Mm-hmm.
only because that's how it was shared with me.
Okay.
But it varies. It varies. It's something that's subjective. Whether you make it with egg or not. Some people substitute the condensed milk for the egg.
Okay.
And sometimes add either more vanilla or even sugar. So just to give it that consistency of what the condensed milk will. But for me, I don't use the egg only because aside from me being plant-based as time has gone on in my life,
yeah.
I also find it, just health reasons, and more as far as even with shelf life. It's something that for me, I would want my audience to enjoy coquito for the long run. So if they want to have it in the fridge, I want to have it, at a time that it's not the holidays. The egg is something that for me was a good substitute. But again, it all depends on the person and on the families. If they want to do it with egg, go right ahead. I'm not someone who says, oh, that's the wrong way to make coquito. That's not coquito. This is coquito. That's not what I'm about. I know it's all about just sharing what your family has taught. And whether it has egg for you or not, as long as it's made with love and it's delicious, make it however you want, So
Exactly.
So I'm with whichever way people make it. But for me, mine is made with no egg.
Okay, that's good to know. That's a really good one to know. And I love that you're not a coquito shamer. Any way you make it.
Oh nah, I don't shame the coquito makers. I actually embrace it.
Yeah.
It just calls for more richness. It's one thing to compete, have friendly competitions and be like, oh man, this person's coquito is better than this person's. But at the end of the day, I'm not going on Instagram saying, oh, this coquito's whack, buy mine. Get mine. Like that's not what I'm about.
Yes, I love that. And, when you were talking about coquito, like, being cooked in the home, like, for me coming from New York, I'm in LA right now, but just like, coquito and as like the drink that you get around December, you find your friends who make it and you order it from them. And then there's a lot of other like kind of homemade drinks that you think of, like nutcrackers and stuff like that.
Right.
So what inspired you to take it from selling it locally to like mailing it now, because you do national, and I ordered a bottle, which hopefully will get here soon. But how did you transition into that, and how do you keep the flavors authentic to yourself as you kind of start making them in a larger amount?
That's a great question. For me, I think one thing that's benefited me is that I stayed consistent with my recipe since I switched it. And I have a process and I have a base of how to go about that. And I just follow it to a T. So it's allowed me to make it either whether it's in a small batch or in a larger scale, because I'm very intricate with how it's made. But the reason why now it's enjoyed in Cali, Texas, Florida, DC, I have like so many people hit me up for it from once Coquito season comes, is because I wanted that enjoyment for so many people. It's something where I believe in my product. And if I believe in it, if you believe in something, you want to share it, because you never know who you can inspire. So one of the reasons why I decided to go ahead and take it on a larger scale was for that reason, for other people to enjoy it, other people to get those nostalgic moments, because that's one thing I always hear, like when they taste it, it's like, oh man, this tastes like abuelita, this tastes like home. I get a lot of people that just, it brings back memories. So it's like, I love to I guess, to promote joy and promote those feelings. Yeah. So, if you can enjoy it in Cali or in Alaska, I'm all for it. You're going to get a bottle one way or another, So that's part of the reason why I decided to branch it out and have it enjoyed in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I'm excited to get it. And I love that you do bottles and cans. I've never really seen Coquito in a can, which makes complete
Yeah.
sense. You know, now they have like canned wine, everything's in canned wine, canned cocktails. So I was like, oh, when I saw your Instagram and your website, I was like, this is a genius idea. Not only is it sold in like a bottle in the sense that you're talking about like the old school like wine bottle type of thing, but it also is in a can for convenience. So I really appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, that was an idea that I had a few years back. I had it a few years back after coming across one of the OGs in the game. A lot of people don't really know this, but Malibu.
Mm.
Malibu was one of the first, and shout outs to Malibu if they ever watch this. But and whoever's in charge over there.
Like Malibu, the
I
alcohol?
came across a Malibu the alcohol, yes,
Okay.
the Caribbean, the Malibu
Yes.
the alcohol.
Mhm.
Like I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago, I came across a can. It was white and pink, and I believe it was their coconut. It was like a Caribbean coconut drink that they had, and it was in a can. And this was way before anyone was doing this.
Ooh.
And I just thought, wow, that's great, that's genius. But at that time, I wasn't ready to do it. It
Yes.
wasn't the time. So now this year, of course, because of the pandemic and being isolated and me taking that time to stay within my creativity,
Mhm.
that idea came back up again, and also paying attention to the market.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, everything's in cans now. So I said, you know what, this is a perfect opportunity to bring it out, and I just went along with the idea that I had 5-6 years ago, and that's what you see with the cans.
That's amazing. I really like that. I know you're sold out of the can, so I got the bottle, but I was like, I need
Yeah.
to get my hand on a can eventually. I really love that idea. I think it's really innovative and, you know, with the time.
Yeah, well, the cans. It's the beautiful thing about the can is that now it can be enjoyed year round.
Mm-hmm.
You can pop those things in a cooler, take it to the beach, and it's like Christmas in July.
Exactly.
So it's one of those things for me that I'm always looking at ways to stay creative and stay innovative, especially with me wanting to continue the tradition and the culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because Coquito is usually enjoyed around the holidays. You know, it's one thing to have it just 2-3 months, which is great. I'm all for that as well. But if something's good, something's good.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to have it as much as possible. You know, so it's part of the reasons behind it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I definitely will be taking some to the beach out here in
Awesome.
California. So
Got
I'll
you.
do that. I'll send you some photos.
Awesome.
So I want to also to know, you know, we're a history podcast. Do you know any history about Coquito? Because I feel like I looked up a lot of stuff and they talk about kind of like colonialization, but then they also talk about the influence of, you know, people who were enslaved that were brought there and, you know, the Taino people. So what history, if you know any, do you know about the formation of this Puerto Rican holiday drink?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that the information and any history is very limited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
very limited.
Is.
Because again, it's like an urban legend in a way. It's like a myth. No one knows where it started from. You know, you get the Spanish colonial period, you know, and how that was influenced with what they did.
Yeah.
You know, I know rum, of course, rum being from Puerto Rico,
of course,
you know, you can't have rum without sugar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's one of those things that it's like, where did this come from? You know, my focus, what I try to focus on is getting as much of the story as possible to then have that marry my product in whatever way it is, you know, because it comes from so many different places, like when the Spanish were there, like our ancestors, like the Tainos. It's like, how can I have that represented within my brand? And it's, and going back to what I said about Brooklyn Coquito, it's kind of the reason why I did it that way, which is like, you don't know where it's coming from. You know, all you got to do is remember the stories and just keep the joy and passing it on. So, you know, a lot of the history, again, it's very vague and it differs.
Yeah, it's like fortunate but unfortunate, but it does seem like in general, like you said, it's like a fusion of these different cultures and different people that were in Puerto Rico.
Right. You know, and it's you know, again, Coquito is sweet. You know, it's a drink you drink. You have after dinner. You know, you're not looking to get all saucy. So even though you can. You know, I've had people say, "Oh, I'm gonna get one bottle, and I'm waiting till Thanksgiving," and they'll call me the next day like, "I just drank this whole bottle. I'm gonna need another one." You know, so it's like, it's one of those things. It's like you gotta enjoy it so I guess in passing.
Yeah.
Because you want to have it at a nice steady pace, but sometimes you just need to indulge in it. So,
Yeah,
but I'm all
especially
for
if it tastes good, it sneaks up on you.
Yeah, absolutely. It will. It definitely will.
What is the alcohol content for your Coquito?
It's 14.
Okay.
14 ABV.
Okay.
It's a nice balance. I guess one thing I like to say about my Coquito is that I believe that the sweetness should always hit you first. It's one thing to get take a shot of tequila and you want to get sauced right away. But
exactly.
with Coquito, it's like, right. With Coquito, you wanna taste the sweetness of it first, and then the alcohol comes a little after. It's like the sweetness opens the door and says, "Hey, come over here," and it invites the alcohol. So it's a great balance of sweetness and kick.
Yes, I love that. Like flavors, like a layered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Like that. What I know there's also some like Coquito competitions, I know like the museum El Musimo or in Manhattan does one, and I know there's like one in New York in particular. Do you plan on
Coquito Masters?
Yes, the Coquito Masters, exactly. They started in like 2002 or something like that. So
the founder, Debbie Quinones, I've been known of Debbie for a long time, and I'm actually just interviewed her a week or so ago for a show that I'm doing. Yeah, and no, it's awesome. She's great. But the Coquito Masters is something that happens every year in New York, and it's a great thing because it also is one of those things that just keeps the tradition and the culture alive.
Yeah,
and it invites many Coquito makers from New York. They have regional rounds. They'll have like rounds in the East Coast and down south in Florida, and fusion rounds with different flavors. So the Coquito Masters is something that has been around for a long time. And me myself, I've never competed in the Coquito Masters, not because I'm not gonna say why not, but the reason why is because I've always felt like I'm not in it for the competition or for people to say that I'm the best.
Yeah.
I'll let just the people decide when they have it and they taste it.
That's good. It's great that you that it is an event that it's like a free event too that allows people to really taste it and learn about it, because I don't think people really talk that much about Coquito. And you mentioned flavors. You just talked about flavors. And when I was doing my research, I realized that there are Coquito flavors. There could be flavors.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there's a bunch of flavors. One thing about Puerto Rico, if you were to go to Puerto Rico, you will find Coquito made, not only just Coquito, but even there's something called Pitorro from Puerto Rico. It's like the Puerto Rican version of moonshine. Oh, yeah. And that's something that's made like in the mountains, and it's very hush hush, and and it's also family oriented. And even with the pitorro, they'll have different flavors to it. So you'll find coconut, you find tangerine, pineapple, passion fruit, pitorro. And I just feel like that's something that for the Puerto Ricans, we love to add different flavors to things. So now with the Coquito, it's something that has also transcended there as well. So you'll find like a pistachio flavor Coquito, hazelnut, Nutella Coquito, banana Coquito, guava Coquito. There's so many different flavors that you can have to it with the Coquito. And again, it just speaks to the culture. We're so rich in wanting to add different things to it. And I love guava by itself. So in a Coquito, imagine that.
I know.
Right.
I'm always like writing them down. I'm like, okay, when I go to Puerto Rico, I need a pistachio Coquito. These flavors sound so good.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I just tried the someone I know made a salted caramel Coquito, and it was delicious.
Sounds like dessert.
Delicious. Yeah, it was so great. It tasted like a cappuccino. Tasted like a cappuccino, nice sweet cappuccino, and it was awesome.
That was beautiful. Yeah, that sounds really good. One of my questions is, how do you feel? I know a lot of people compare. They also will often say like, Coquito is the Puerto Rican eggnog. How do you feel about that?
I think it's not a bad thing when you're trying to relate it to something. I think that you always have to try to find something to compare something with in order to make it an easier transition, an easier way to explain something. So if someone calls Coquito a Puerto Rican version of eggnog, I can understand why, because if you compare both eggnog and Coquito, both are creamy, Both have alcohol. Both are sweet. Both are enjoyed around the holidays. You know, it's a niche product, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not mad when someone calls it a Puerto Rican version of eggnog. One thing that I would say, that I used to say, I haven't said it in a while, it's just, I called it eggnog's more popular, delicious sibling.
Oh, the cuter sibling.
Yeah. You know, that sibling that just gets all the attention. That's just like that one's the star. You know, no shame for the other one. We love the other one, but that's the star. Sometimes you gotta know who Michael Jordan is, you know?
Exactly.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
I relate to that. I like that comparison a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. So my other question is, other Caribbean places also have kind of like holiday drinks. I know like Cuba has one and other places. Have you tried any of those other drinks? And could you tell us maybe about one of your favorites?
It's been a while. It's been a while since I tried them, only because right now I've been plant-based for 3 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. And I find like a lot of times like the one that sticks for me is cremas from Haiti. Ooh. And it's very similar to Coquito. But I love that there's so many different cultures and so many different places, especially in the Caribbean, that have their own versions of what it is. You know, they got ponche crema and cremas in Dominican and DR. There's also ponche. You know, so many different variations of what it means to continue like this whole cream liqueur, I guess you can say, this cream liqueur culture. You know, especially for our people, because at the end, you know, Bailey's and what other ones? What other companies have been like such in the forefront for such a long time, you know, that we're kind of like not represented, you know, to a degree. So it's like, the more we can continue keeping our culture alive, the more we can be represented, especially in avenues and areas like the cream liqueur sector.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's like representation and just culture too. So it's like you're doing kind of both. You know, you're like representing Caribbean culture and Puerto Rican culture, and then you're also like educating people on it as well, right? Just through their taste buds. So it's like really kind of diversifying your liquor, you know, diversifying your at-home bar.
Yeah. No, I love that, diversifying your at-home bar. You know, it's one thing to do things and keep it very home. You know, it takes some pride, and sometimes you got to take risk to go ahead and say, you know what, this is good enough to be enjoyed outside of the house. Let's bring this out there, you know, and that for me is something that I take pride in. You know, I consider myself very prideful. Of course, Puerto Ricans will wave a flag and scream "Wepa" the whole year. But you know, for me, I always push things forward that I believe in, and you know, with my product, I've always believed in it since the first time I made it. So it's part of the reason why I continue to push it out.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm excited. I appreciate what you're doing. It's like beyond just selling alcohol. So thank you for doing that. So if someone is listening and they want to maybe make Coquito at home, what tips and tricks would you give them? I mean, I know you're not gonna give away your recipe, but what would you tell them, kind of like what to buy and what to think about in that process?
If someone were to contact me to make Coquito,
and they're like, Johnny, teach me how to make Coquito.
Well, I'm assuming that they already went through YouTube and Google and found all the other recipes. But to hit me up and say, how do I make Coquito? First, I would say, you got to set the mood.
Okay.
You got to set the mood. Every time when we're in production, there's a mood set. There's music going. You know, there's a certain energy that needs to be around the production of what it means to make Brooklyn Coquito. So whether we're listening to Bad Bunny, Hector Lavoe, old school, what we call Jibaro Christmas music, which is like a lot of the cuatro guitar and just different sounds. You know, it's about creating an atmosphere, creating a culture.
Definitely.
And sometimes people may not be, I just want the recipe, bro. Like, just give me the recipe. I'm like, well, that's part of the recipe. You know, so if they're willing to go the extra mile, then I will share certain aspects of what it means to make a Coquito that's not exactly mine, but very close to it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, for
What,
sure.
where do you see the future of Brooklyn Coquito? Like, what are some, where do you see your business, 3 to 5 years from now?
That's an amazing question.
And what should we expect?
Yeah, well, you should expect us to continue doing it every year. You should expect my face to be as joyful and as jolly as it is probably right now. I'm hoping, only because it's something that's fun. But I love being very present and being in the present moment and just going with what I feel naturally should be happening. You know, for example, like what I mentioned earlier with the cans. If I would have done the cans 5-6 years ago, who knows what would have happened? I would have felt flat in my face and no one would have accepted it. Like, what the heck is this, you know? Yeah. So it's about the timing of it. So of course, having it shared globally is always the goal. That's the goal. And being in as many households as possible is always the goal. And that's where we want to be, whether that's continuing to do it this way or it's in a larger scale. You know, you just never know. But just know that I will always continue to do it year in and year out.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm excited to see you grow and prosper.
Oh, good.
This is going to be, this is going to be released around on National Coquito Day. Do you know, awesome. Do you have any special plans for National Coquito Day or like, or how do you feel about the day just being recognized nationally?
I love it. I love that it's being recognized nationally. I think anytime there's a spotlight on something that is positive, is always a great thing. So Coquito having its own day, it's amazing. Do I have something special planned for National Coquito Day? Okay, well, for National Coquito Day, we'll be giving away some free stuff.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so if you follow us on our Instagram and our social media, you will see what that would be. So yeah, just different ways to continue providing joy.
I'm excited.
Thank you so much.
Right before I ask you the signature question, I just want to let you have the floor and just tell people where they can find you, how they can support you. Because you're doing some great work out here. You're making some great drinks and teaching people about, Puerto Rican culture. Let people know where they can find you, and then I'll ask you the last summary question, which is probably like the hardest question, but no sweat.
Yeah, no, awesome. Well, you can find us on Instagram, brooklyncoquito.com, and that's Coquito, Coquito. We're on Facebook as well, Facebook / The Brooklyn Coquito, brooklyncoquito.com. If you want to email me or text me, my number's on the Instagram page. My email is jrivera, that's Rivera, the letter J, Rivera at brooklyncoquito.com. Because I'm always open to just listening to people. Sometimes a lot of times people will hit me up just to get like pointers or, hey, can you where can I find this? And, some consulting. I'm always down for that, and we don't got to call it consulting, but advice, I'm open. So yeah, those are the places where you can find us, you can find me. And I'm always open to sharing anything that anyone would like to know.
Are you taking any more orders?
Yes, we are. It's been pretty busy, which is great. But orders are going to be going on till mid-January.
Okay.
So
good.
Yeah, we don't stop.
Nationwide, and then you also do pickups at your store.
We do, yes. We're doing pickups. The week of Christmas, that Christmas week, starting that Monday, Tuesday, I usually see that there's a lot of pickup requests happening. So pickup will definitely be happening in Brooklyn.
Okay, great. That's good to know. I hope everyone's listening and, going to follow and support and put in your orders. This is a great time to do that. Definitely. My last signature question is, if you had to write a chapter in a textbook about Coquito, what would you call it and why?
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a great question. If I had to write a chapter in a book about Coquito, what would I call it? I think I would call it With Love, Coquito.
Okay. Can you expand on why you chose that name?
Yeah, I would call it With Love, Coquito. Just because I feel that when you enjoy Coquito, it's usually one of the last things you enjoy throughout your meal. You already went down your pork, your rice and beans, your arroz con gandules, your jamon, all these different things, and you're having it like kind of like last, you know, or even sometimes you're just sitting with the fireplace on and you just have the coquito. It's kind of like you're winding down. It's like the last thing that you have during your night in a way. And when you finish off a letter, sometimes or most of the time, at least sometimes for me, I've wrote with love, Johnny. You know, so I feel like with love, Coquito, it's just a stamp of what Coquito did the whole letter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, so this is what I'm going to provide. I'm going to give you joy. I'm going to bring you happiness. I'm going to bring you love. I'm going to bring you family. I'm going to bring you culture. I'm going to bring you all these things with love, Coquito. So that would be the name of my chapter.
That's a beautiful chapter name. I really like it. And well, thank you so much for chatting with me. I really appreciate talking to you and learning about yourself, your family, Puerto Rican culture, and Coquito at the same time.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me, Toya. I would just want to wish you so much luck with everything that you're doing. It's so great that you are highlighting so many different people doing different things. And it's amazing. It's amazing to share. So I love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that is the conclusion for episode 14 on the history of Coquito, aka Eggnog. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Actually, just thank you so much for listening to season 1. We have over 8,000 downloads at this point. I'm hoping we have 9,000 by the end of this week because it's National Coquito Day on Monday. So I feel like a lot of people will be really interested in uncovering some of the history. If you enjoyed this season at all, please take a moment to leave us a review. We haven't had a review since August. So if you're enjoying this, if you enjoyed season 1, whatever episode you're on at this point, if it's this one, just take a moment, write a sentence or two about what you like about the podcast. Give us a star rating. And that's it. It shouldn't take too long. Please make sure you follow us all over the interwebs. We're on our winter break in terms of posting podcasts, but we still will be giving teasers and quizzes and stuff like that on our website and on our social media. And if you're feeling a little giving during this season, please donate to the podcast. You'll find the donate button on thatwasn'tmytextbook.com. All donations go towards equipment, goes towards making this a better podcast for all of us, goes towards research, maybe hiring someone because I'm a one-woman show. And again, don't forget we're taking a little winter break. Don't forget about us. But we'll be back on Friday, January 8th. And thanks again for your time. Enjoy the food, the days off, the rest, the reset, the holidays, whatever it is you do during this time of year. And until next time, or should I say next year, remember, knowledge is power.